Hey everyone, I wanted to go over the new and exciting leaks we got for Monster Hunter Rise on the Nintendo Switch. If you've been following my channel, you know that about a week ago, I posted a massive leaked monster list that was obtained via the promotional material as part of the Capcom leak from last month. In this video, I want to cover a new set of previously unannounced monsters, some new returning ones, some new areas we'll be able to play in, when can we expect to see a new trailer, and much more. So we have a lot to get to. But before we do, I wanted to give a quick shout out to Daligan2 on Twitter. Quite a lot of what I'll be covering in this video comes directly from him, so if you want to stay on top of any of the new and upcoming leaks, I'd highly recommend you guys check out his work and follow him on Twitter. Because all of this is in Japanese, getting it translated and sorted out is often thankless work, but not here, so please check him out. Alright, that's enough table setting, let's get into the actual leaks. A lot of the monsters that are being referenced are something that I already covered in the previous video, where there were about 18 total monsters being covered. Rajang, everyone's favorite Goku, is part of this leak as well, and it confirms that he is coming into the game. It's not necessarily all that exciting since we already heard about it in the last video, but it's good to know that a returning monster of such high stakes is definitely coming back. Another one is Barret. Now I talked about this one in the past, where essentially his mud mechanic is about the only interesting thing about him. He does work as a starter monster and somewhat interesting mechanics, but other than that, not all that exciting to me. Tigrex is another monster that I covered in the previous leak, and something with skill check and Iceborne. Seeing him come back in this game and being assured and confirmed by several leakers already is definitely a good sign. Ultimately with Tigrex, if the subspecies are included, it would be a home run hit, but other than that, it's a good check overall. Now Tobi Kadachi is specifically mentioned in this leak, and that's a monster that I covered in the last video, but not because he was part of the leak, but because I thought it was like, well, yeah, we already saw him in the trailer, he's gonna be part of the game. I don't know why they wouldn't put him in the marketing, but apparently, yeah, he is part of the game, he is being included in the marketing, it just simply wasn't mentioned by the previous leaker, but he is being mentioned by this guy. Kezu is another monster mentioned in the previous video and that is also referenced in this part of this leak. Essentially, he's coming back into the game with a brand new model and he's going to look a little bit different than we're used to seeing him. I saw a lot of people in the comments saying that they're not too excited to see Kezu come back. I'm not sure why. I think he's an awesome monster, especially one of those rare ice ones to begin with. So I think it's great that he's coming back. But yeah, the comments, I just found them interesting that a lot of people weren't all that interested to see him come back. Another one that I previously mentioned was Anjanath, also coming back. This was another flagship, second type flagship monster on Monster Hunter World. Essentially, it was the first monster that everyone got to see when that game was being promoted. So him coming back is great. Again, the subspecies being included would be great, kind of like Tigrex. But other than that, Anjanath is a great monster to just simply include in the game. And of course, as previously mentioned, Kuluyaku is another one of those Monster Hunter World type monsters that we'll be seeing appear in this game. Another starter type, an interesting one with some really basic mechanics. I would have expected to see Kuropeko instead because he's kind of like a fan favorite and we haven't seen him in quite a long time. But other than that, it's an interesting one to have, and you know, we've heard about this already. Alright, so far all of these monsters were covered in the previous video. Nothing all that new, it's just we're hearing it from a different source already. Now we're going to start moving into the new monsters and the new monsters that we haven't necessarily heard about that are also returning. So Yatsukadaki is the spider. Now this is the monster that we've already seen in the game once before and part of the trailer, and we're actually going to start seeing it a lot more in the marketing in the near future. And this is something that I'm going to cover towards the later part of the video. But essentially, yeah, the spider is coming into the game. It's a brand new type of monster, so we're going to see a lot of it in the near future. Another new monster that I mentioned in the last video, but we have a little bit more information on now, is the Namahage bear. This is basically the elder yokai themed type of monster. Now, a lot of people asked me in the comments if this was actually Arzuros, and it is not, because Arzuros was already part of the game to begin with. These monsters have no actual data. They're simply just like code names. We don't actually know what they look like. We have like some sort of idea of what they might end up doing based on their names because of Japanese naming conventions, essentially, where they take kind of like what they do and they put it into the name, but we don't have any idea what these monsters are. So this Namahage bear is essentially an elder yokai type monster. Other than that, we don't know much. Now another brand new monster that we simply had not heard anything about before is called Ibushi Makihiko. Essentially, Maki means kindling, something like after you get when you burn something, and Hiko means fire child according to some of the translations that I've seen. So you can expect this to be a fire monster with some type of smoke or type abilities. essentially messing around with that wood-themed fire mechanic. It would be interesting to see a brand new fire monster because, like I mentioned in the previous leak, and I'll cover in a little bit regarding the new areas, there will be a fire area in this game to begin with starting out. So they're definitely going to have a place to be able to put this monster in. Now, the other brand new monster that we haven't heard anything about is actually called, and I want to try to get this right, Naru Harahata Hime. Harahata actually means thunderclap, like when you hear the thunder and the noises that it makes afterwards. Hime actually means princess. So this actually basically turns out to something like sound/thunder princess. That's kind of like the mechanics of this monster, even though it is essentially a water monster because it references something like mermaids, which goes in tandem with the tweet that director Ichinose put out, essentially mentioning something about a mermaid type monster. Now, because this is actually a new monster, a lot of the theories going around is that it could actually be a Mitsusune type subspecies. Essentially, they take the skeleton from Mitsusune and they make an entirely new monster out of that. So probably worth something considering. I don't necessarily know if it will be an elder dragon or an elder anything, but it's worth considering that this could be some sort of thunder/water monster with some sort of mermaid type sound mechanics. Only time will tell. I have seen several referencing material mentioning that there will be 11 new monsters in the game, and so far we know of only 8 of them, but we've only seen like 4 to 5. So it's worth considering that a lot of the monsters that are essentially new in the game, we haven't actually seen them yet. While a lot of the leaks do reference a lot of returning older monsters, the new ones we simply do not know what they are. Again, we have a lot of like referencing material based on their names, but that doesn't quite tell us what they look like or what their actual mechanics will be like. Part of this new leaks are 3 returning monsters. Now, one of them I talked about in the last video, but we have a little bit more information this time around. Valtrax is coming back into the game. Now, essentially what's being mentioned here is that there's a super Valfog, where it's something like a subspecies. He's stronger, he's more powerful, he's more agile, obviously looks different, maybe even a different color scheme. So Valstrax is coming back, and there's probably going to be a subspecies with him where he's, probably some like real end game type of monster. I know I got a lot of comments last time saying that Valstrax was everyone's favorite or a lot of people's favorites, and they were excited to see him come back. So to hear that there's going to be a subspecies of him to begin with, super exciting. Not just to you, believe me, to me as well. Now, the last 2 monsters are brand new. We simply hadn't heard anything about them coming back into this game, and now we do. We know that Diablos is coming back into the game. This monster obviously is something of a flagship, kind of like Rathalos. He's been around in just about almost, I want to say, every game. I know he probably skipped a few, but essentially because there's some marketing because of the movie, and remember, the Monster Hunter movie is coming out in Japan the very same day Monster Hunter Rise releases worldwide. Yeah, you can bet money on the fact that Diablos is going to be in the game because they're going to use him as marketing essentially. So yeah, Diablos coming back is great. I would have preferred White Monoblos. He's kind of like one of my favorites, but Diablos is great. Almost a flagship type monster to begin with. So yeah, him coming back, great news all around. Now, the last returning monster and the last monster I'm going to talk about in this video is Basil. Basil is coming into this game. This is the crazy thing to me specifically, and it gets me so excited because I don't understand the Basil community. The fandom of Basil is just bizarre to me. People either love him or they love to pretend that they love him even though they hate to actually fight him because he's so freaking annoying. So I don't know if I don't quite got a grip on the community. Please leave a comment on the bottom if you actually like him or you just like meme about the fact that you like him, because he's such a bizarre fight to begin with. And it's one of those monsters that loves to stay in the air, obviously because of his mechanics, where he's dropping bombs all over the place. So kind of like Valstrax. Now there's 2 almost airborne type monsters that will just constantly stay in the air and just mess around. So it's interesting that they're trying to do that, but out of all the Monster World monsters, I would have never expected this one to be the one coming back, but here we are. So far, the only monster that I would love to see in this game make a comeback is Nergigante. Essentially, he would basically make this game perfect for me, because that would be great. And like I previously mentioned, White Monoblos. But other than that, man, this lineup for monsters right here, extremely strong. And again, we have several new monsters that we haven't seen and will be seeing in the future, so all exciting all around. Now that's all the monsters that I wanted to cover that are actually part of this leak. The returning and some of the brand new monsters that we're hearing about for the first time. But actually, that's not all the information. There's new areas to talk about. Now, in the last video, I talked about the Thunder Archipelago and the Molten Caves. Essentially, a new ice and a new fire area. But now we have a little bit more information on this. Essentially, the Molten Caves is the confirmed name for the new fire area. That's locked in, that's not changing. However, this leak does mention that Tundra Islands is actually the name for the Tundra Archipelago. And I think Archipelago sounds better than Islands because it makes it more classy, sounds, I don't know, better, I guess. It's a different word to use, but essentially means that we do have an ice area, we do have a fire area. I talked about that in the last video. That's cool and great. Well, here's the kicker. We have a new flooded forest area coming and sandy plains. So flooded forest basically sounds like a wooden area, and sandy plains is something of a desert. Now we have a little bit more detail on this. Essentially, the leak talks about that maps are taking influence and motifs from prior maps. For example, flooded forest is partially based on the old ancient forest, while the Tundra Islands, or aka Tundra Archipelago, is based off iceborne maps. Essentially, these maps are a little bit like a mixture of the old and the new in this brand new engine. They didn't want to port the old maps, they kind of want to start it fresh with some new ideas, probably make use of those wire bugs, make sure that you're moving around all over the place. And yeah, man, this sounds great. Essentially, the game now, as far as we know it, has the starting area that we've already seen and 4 areas: Molten Caves, Tundra Archipelago / Tundra Islands, Flooded Forest, and the Sandy Plains. So that's 5 areas starting out, and I'm sure there's going to be more to come. Now, as part of this leak, there's also being mentions that during the Game Awards on December 10th, we will be seeing a brand new trailer for the game, featuring the previous mentioned Yatsukadaki, aka the spider monster, and maybe a new couple of areas, some of the ones that I probably mentioned in the past, maybe even like the Flooded Forest. Essentially, we're going to be able to see a couple of new monsters and returning ones, and a new trailer, perhaps even a new mechanic or so that we haven't seen in the past. The interesting part about this specific moment of the leak is that I've heard several similar statements already from different people, not directly talking about Monster Hunter Rise, but essentially when they're talking about leaks for the Game Awards. So the idea that there's going to be a trailer for this game during the Game Awards is not necessarily tied to this leak specifically, but it's something that I've simply heard other people already mention in the past. So if anything, if I was to put money on anything, if all of these leaks are actually accurate, we're going to start to see them basically on the 10th. If nothing happens on the 10th and there is no trailer, then probably we should start getting worried about these leaks actually being true or not. The last thing that I wanted to quickly mention that is also part of this leak is that it's obviously a no-brainer. Nintendo and Capcom are teaming up to release a couple of special edition Switches for both traditional Nintendo Switches and the Switch Lite. There's also going to be a set of themed Joy-Cons and of course a themed Pro Controller specifically for Monster Hunter Rise. Now, it doesn't say like what they're going to look like or anything like that, but there's 2 colors mentioned, dark blue and leather brown. So take that what you will. Whether does that mean that the Joy-Cons are dark blue and the dock is leather brown, or the Joy-Cons are brown and the dock is dark blue, I don't know. I can't speak to that. However, dark blue and leather brown are kind of like the starter armor set, the Chimera armor set that we've seen for the hunters essentially when they start out. So the colors match the rumors, that's for sure. But other than that, yeah, it's something of a no-brainer to see them basically put out a system, a Switch Lite and a Nintendo Switch, Joy-Cons and even a Pro Controller, themed specifically for the game. You gotta remember that Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate in Japan had a specific model come out in Japan only that was like themed around the game. It was a black system with great Joy-Cons, I believe, that was like extremely rare to find, and you could only buy it at the Capcom website. So that made it even extremely harder. You couldn't even import it. You had to like buy it from scalpers essentially. So yeah, it was extremely hard to find. So that's all the leaks that I have to cover for you guys. Once again, a huge and a massive shout out to Daligan2 on Twitter. Give him a follow, give him a shout out, mention him in the comments, whatever. Do what you gotta do. These people are doing God's work, man. I am so excited for this game. These people are like translating all the information so we can basically get it out there and let others know. So excited. I'm so looking forward to this game, and I hope you are too. If you're new to my channel, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. And as always, thank you so much for watching. See ya.